Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh, welcoming you to an all new World of Warships gameplay today on our channel. In this episode we'll be featuring the Tier 7 Japanese destroyer, known as the Akatsuki, in a Tier 8 standard battle on the map Northern Lights. For reference, our ship is stock and we are joined by our two good friends, Z and Ben, whereby Z is sailing out in his fully upgraded Akatsuki and Ben is sailing out in his Gneisenau. The purpose of today's gameplay as we begin to make our way westwards is to highlight how I've come back into the world of random battles after ranking out in Season 6 of Ranked. Now for many of you may be wondering exactly how do you switch off from playing Ranked and switch back into the world or the mindset of playing the random battle. Well, in short ladies and gentlemen, I approach both types of battle in the same way. I go out there to succeed, to have fun and just do what I possibly can. Of course the stakes are a tiny bit higher for some when you go into ranked because you are trying to rank up, you're trying to maintain and achieve more stars compared to random battles where you're just trying to pick up experience so that way you can upgrade your ship, you can improve your captain skills and make your way to the next ship, if not finish off grinding all the way to tier 10. But in all honesty, apart from the fact that it's stars at play as well as experience, I didn't really see ranked in a different light. Just play the way I would normally do, play smart, play sensibly, play for the team, and just see if you can succeed. You're going to win some games by a huge margin, some are going to be incredibly close and heartbreaking at times, and there's other games where your team's just going to fall flat. But that's just like the world of random battles. But one thing I did decide to do was play a ship, or in particular a class of ship, which was completely different from what I played in Ranked, and a class which I absolutely loathe. Not because I don't like the class on the battlefield, but because I'm not very good in it. So I went from playing a heavy cruiser class, i.e. the Pensacola, with its 8-inch guns, which can cause absolute mayhem on enemy cruisers and enemy battleships, and I decided to go all the way to a torpedo boat destroyer, i.e. the Akatsuki on screen right now. And I have had my eye on the ship for a while just to see what it would be like, because it's a very intriguing ship. The fact that it's got 3 twin 127mm cannon turrets, and it's also got 3 triple torpedo tubes mounted down the centre line, which means it's got quite a nice distribution of armament in general. It's not only torpedo reliant, but it does have the ability to act as a gunboat by the looks of things, or at least that's my first impression, when it needs to thanks to the large number of guns on the ship. Of course it has a weaker reload compared to its German, Russian and American counterparts. But enough hypothesising about what the ship is going to be like in the long haul for myself and my final opinion on it, let's talk about the gameplay. So we made our way westwards, i.e. where Alpha would be if this were a domination game, to provide vision for our team. Now as we can see there are 5 battleships on the enemy team. Yep, that's 5 battleships by the looks of things, and there's also 5 destroyers. And we're trying to provide some visibility, some spotting distance for our teammates, not only our platoon, but also our allies who are making their way this way. Reason being, if we can provide that early vision we can get some damage out, i.e. our team can, and it can put us in the lead in terms of the overall health grind down that occurs over the course of a standard battle, because there's no objectives at play here apart from your team's capture point. Now having made our way out here, we've been spotted, which means there's a stealthy destroyer in front of us. With our 7.2km detectability by sea, we're not the stealthiest of destroyers, and a good number of the destroyers in the enemy team will be able to outspot us, and it's a Harassing. So what we decided to do is go straight into a defensive smokescreen. Reason being, there's an enemy Kiev and that will tear us to shreds at 7km, and even if it gets closer we will be able to put up a good amount of damage on them, but they're going to rip us apart in the long haul. But the issue is we can't afford to stay in this smokescreen for long, because if the enemy Harassing decides to torpedo us and fires off all 16 of their effective torpedoes with the torpedo reload booster, then we're going to be dead in our smoke. And we must always remember the golden rule that smokescreens are a brilliant torpedo magnet. And the torpedoes are coming into our smokescreen right now as we make our way out. And if anything, this has actually helped to enable Ben in his Gneisenau to move forward, because the Harassing has fired off a large number of torpedoes into our smoke to try and collect us, and this means that there's a lower number of torpedoes that can head towards Ben when he makes his way round on the western side of the map to try and engage the enemy fleet. I'm also spotting these torpedoes coming out, or it could be the case that they're being spotted by Ben's spotting aircraft, or alternatively someone's hydroacoustic, but we've made the enemy team waste a resource for a limited time. Now having reloaded our own torpedoes, we're going to start turning around and making our way back towards our smokescreen. But we're turning towards our allies so that way if any more torpedoes appear, as they just have, that way we can spot them early on. We're providing that detection screen, and we don't have vigilance on the ship, we only have last stand and priority target. But this enemy craft spay has overextended significantly, trying to use the smoke screens available in order to conceal their approach, but they've poorly timed it, and as a result it means they're going to be ripped to pieces by Ben's wonderful guns as he picks up his first kill. So now with the enemy craft spay out the way, we're going to turn back in and try to push a little bit further forward. But then what we think to ourselves at this point is there'd be no point, because the issue is that Kiev. The Kiev is able to outrun us, able to outrange us. The only thing the Kiev can't technically do is outspot us, because it's a massive target compared to our own ship and its detectability goes with it. So what we're doing instead is deflecting a little bit further south. We're actually going to make our way to the right of the island in front of us, i.e. the island that's towards our bow. And that's actually going to be on what is our port side very shortly, because we haven't seen the Shiratsuyu and we haven't seen any more torpedoes recently, so perhaps they're trying to flank us and our teammates out in the west, i.e. going through the valley where Bravo would be in the domination match. And we're going to be the only ship that can effectively spot them, and that's why we're keeping quite close to the landmass, because we want to be able to nullify the detectability advantage the Shiratsuyu has over us. Is this assumption going to pay off? We're about to find out as we make our way round. Our torpedoes are ready, our smoke screen's only 10 seconds away, we've got the resources ready to go. And it's confirmed the Shiratsuyu appears right out in front of us, and we decide to fire off all of our torpedoes. We fire two off to what would be the bow of the Shiratsuyu, and then they turn in, so we fire a set towards their turn in their bow. We will clip them with a torpedo hopefully to bring them out straight away. There we go, one torpedo hit and we'll finish them off with our main battery. So we rotate around, and there we go, our first kill. So the Shiratsuyu removed out of the match and they only managed to get off one set of torpedoes. We now turn away from the enemy Farragut that's gently harassing us. And we are going to go to smoke here. We're going to try and make the Farragut think they've won the engagement and can be over aggressive, because they haven't got visibility of the fact there's a friendly destroyer on our team just off to our port side. It's our friendly Akatsuki, the tier 8 gunboat, a phenomenally powerful one with its 100mm cannon. And this means that the Farragut now, thanks to them firing on us, is going to have their maximum detectability values, and therefore it's drifting right out in front of an Akatsuki that can tear them to pieces. But not only that, we've also got a Tirpitz looking directly at them. That Farragut's game is as good as over, as they fall apart. And that's all because they became a little bit hyper aggressive. We used our smoke to encourage them to shoot at us one more time, and it meant that they could not stealth up. So with the Farragut now gone from the match, that's two enemy destroyers gone for the loss of one of our own. And this also means that the enemy team is really struggling to actually move forward. As we can see on the minimap, our team is gradually making their way a little bit further into enemy territory. Meanwhile, the enemy team's battleships and remnant destroyers and remnant cruiser are all sitting back towards their objective. They haven't got the confidence, let's say, to go forward. And they haven't got the destroyers, we could say, to go forward. Although we don't know what's going on the eastern side of the map at the moment. We only know that we've got a friendly destroyer and a friendly cruiser over there. And we could assume that the remaining two enemy destroyers are over there. But that's just an assumption. So now we're starting to make our way forward. We're just keeping our eyes open on the minimap for what could potentially occur. But what we can see here is that directly in front of us in the enemy base are three battleships. A Bismarck, a North Carolina and the enemy Nagato. And our intention now is to use our torpedoes to harass these ships into putting them in a very difficult position. Now what do we mean by that exactly? Well, the thing is, a lot of people would say straight away you should always fire your torpedoes on tight spreads, and that way if you do hit a target, you're more likely to hit with all of your torpedoes in that given spread and do maximum damage. I personally prefer to do things differently, and that is I will use wide spreads at longer distances, or at least for my first salvo, and you're going to see that here. Now why I'm doing this is because if there's two Bismarcks and a North Carolina all sailing in approximately the same space, I want to break these ships up. Because as a group, i.e. a trio, they can be very powerful against any aggressor. But once they're split up, put into positions where they don't want to be, and have to angle in an inappropriate way, i.e. they have to show a broadside to our allies over on the western side of the map for the example, then as a result it makes life difficult for them. And because of the fast reload speed of the stock torpedoes on the Akatsuki, i.e. that 70-second reload, that means we can very quickly come around and fire off the next set of torpedoes once these ones are pretty much hidden amongst the enemy fleet. We can see they're approximately 75% of the way to the target right now, and we're already down to 30 seconds on our reload. and these torpedoes with their 10 km range will make it to the target, and with their ability to do a maximum of 16,267 HP of damage, they will do a good amount of damage when one hits that North Carolina, taking off 10,719. And also what this means is, because we cause some flooding, in fact we hit with 2 torpedoes, one hit another target that looks like the enemy Miyoko perhaps? Not sure where the other torpedo went, doesn't matter, we hit a target, that's important. But because we've made that North Carolina have to get rid of flooding, it means that our allies can now open up with their main batteries and cause the North Carolina to catch ablaze. And when it does, they can't get rid of the fire, and that puts the North Carolina pretty much out of the game. Now, as we fire off our next set on tight spreads in order to try and maximise our damage, we've got an interesting situation. The enemy Kagero has been spotted taking out our friendly Kagero. Now we need to try and get rid of that enemy destroyer because the Kagero is a very dangerous torpedo boat, or at least compared to us for the time being, whereby they are most likely to be better in terms of their concealment, because not only do they get access to the concealment module upgrade, but also when you have tier 8 ships, pardon me, it's very likely that you're going to have an experienced captain, i.e. 10 points or more, and will therefore have concealment expert. And we pick up another torpedo hit on the North Carolina to essentially put them out of the match with our ally finishing them off. And we're just creeping our way towards where that Kagero was last spotted. And we can also see that off to our starboard side we've also got an enemy destroyer. We're not going to look at it because we're more worried about that Kagero for the time being. And that destroyer is not going to be too much of a problem because they seem intent on evading our cruiser off to our starboard side as well. Now here we're going to have to make a significant misplay. And it actually turns out our friendly North Carolina killed off that enemy destroyer in the south, and that was an enemy Fubuki. But coming back to our main topic, we are going to intentionally make a misplay here in order to lure the Kagero out. And this is something that I try to think about. How can you make an opponent become overconfident? Because look at our health situation, we're on roughly 50% health. The Kagero was on approximately 8,000 health from what we recall, and the Kagero is the better ship. It's got the higher fire rate, it's got the more powerful torpedoes, it's got the better detectability and manoeuvrability, and we get spotted here so we know the Kagero is detecting us. Now we're just going to essentially sail broadside because we would say that the Kagero's got to be off to our port side. Of course the risk here is that the enemy Tirpitz and the enemy Bismarck will fire at us, and the Tirpitz is going to do so, the shells are incoming. But as they fire and begin to turn away, the Kagero opens up. And because of our weak turret traverse, this means we can't open fire back at the Kagero. But it doesn't matter, because what we've done is essentially traded 3,000 of our health and set up a defensive smokescreen. Now the Kagero at this point will probably be thinking to themselves, well, I can torpedo that smokescreen and I don't have to worry too much because it's very likely that Akatsuki's going to sit in his smoke because he's just lost all that health. So we fire off all of our torpedoes here. We fire off 2 tight spreads and then a 3rd wide spread for our smoke in return. And the Kagero is pushing forward. Having opened fire of all of our guns at this point towards the aft end of our ship, the XY guns, we set the Kagero on fire and they turn broadside to try and get off all of their guns. And unless they score all 6 hits, they're not going to take us out straight away. And because of that, they've turned broadside to our torpedoes, and those are going to hit the target. There we go, that's the Kagero out of the game. So we essentially baited them into showing a broadside to the maximum profile of their ship. We anticipated where to put our torpedoes on the maximum possible spread of the 3 sets of torpedoes in order to cover enough ground to make sure the Kagero was going to take one or have to navigate between them, and we picked up the kill as a result. And we're now up to 59,000 damage. But a little bit more to go hopefully. We have lost a lot of health, however, we're now down to our last 1,500. So we can't afford to do any plays like that anymore unless we're really confident we're not going to get hit. But RNG being a thing, it probably does mean we're going to take 1 hit. And because it's essentially 2 enemy battleships, 1 destroyer, 1 cruiser, in fact it's 3 enemy battleships, let me correct myself, we can't afford to get spotted by any means because it only takes 1 or 2 shells to knock us out. So what's the plan now? Well, what we have to think about at this point is, what's the most important target? The enemy Bismarck has fallen, the enemy Tirpitz is still going, it has a lot of health, and there's also the problem of the enemy Nagato. Well, we're going to focus on that Tirpitz because they seem to be drifting quite close to the islands in the sort of 5 line on the minimap. And what we intend to do is try and ambush them with our torpedoes. We're not going to get close and try and bum rush them because that's just not going to work. We no longer have a speed boost available as it's about to run out in 15 seconds time. So instead we're just trying to get into position whereby we'll be able to use our torpedoes in order to hit the turrets and put them out of the match. And the good thing here, and unfortunately you can't hear this, is that Z is coming up on the 4 line with his own sets of torpedoes for the turrets, and we're coordinating over team speak here to say to one another, look, if you're going to torpedo the target at this angle, I will come in at the other angle and torpedo the turrets, and one of us is going to hit it. So at the moment Z's getting himself up, he's trying to get as close as possible before opening fire of his torpedoes to provide the turrets with the minimal possible time in order to be able to evade them. Meanwhile, I'll be coming in from what would be, from the turrets perspective, it would be their port side, and in fact Z is on their port side as well, but I'll be coming further to the port side, and I'll be firing off my torpedoes from behind a landmass. I'll be concealed at a distance of approximately 5.5 kilometers, dropping a little bit closer here. We're going to let off our torpedoes at just over 5 kilometers. Here they go. So we can see Z's torpedoes already on their way in, and it's actually caused the turrets to have to turn full broadside. And I believe Z may get 1 or 2 torpedo hits. In the meantime, as our torpedoes make their way in, we're going to constantly be looking at them and then switching back to looking at our ship as we make our way carefully towards the landmass in front of our bow to make sure we don't get spotted by the enemy Nagato. We're managing our speed here just to keep the Nagato out of spotting range. And we can see how our torpedoes are heading towards the target quite nicely, and we are going to clip them with a couple by the looks of things. It's not going to be a kill, but still, it's some damage we wanted. In fact, to the life, we even did pick up the kill. And with that, our second kill in the bag, we're now up to 78,643 damage. And we briefly get detected by the enemy Nagato here, but it's okay because we're heading behind a landmass very quickly, and they didn't have their guns pointed towards us. We didn't check that, but we had a good feeling they wouldn't have had their guns pointed directly towards us and wouldn't have had time to switch their fire onto us, even if their guns were pointed in our direction, because we only provide them with an approximate 3.5 second window. So the last question on the screen really is, how do we get rid of the Kiev? Well, it's not our job, because we've done our job in helping to bring down the enemy battleships, and we've also assisted in taking down 2 of the enemy's most powerful torpedo boats. That's correct. And as a result, we're now going to make our way into the enemy cap, whereby the enemy Nagato is heading away from the cap, so if they do want to defend it, they've got to turn fully around, because they've got to come so close to us compared to how they would an enemy battleship, from their perspective on an enemy cruiser, to spot that we've got all the time in the world, and we are the faster ship, the more manoeuvrable ship, and we have our speed booster available now. So we've got no risk here as the enemy Kiev tries to play out a match at the bottom of our screen, or we should say at the bottom of our mini-map, whereby they're trying to harass our ships on our friendly cap. The Graf Spey picks up the Kiev kill, which means it's only 1 enemy ship left, and we're just going to encroach into the enemy cap and relax. We've done our job, let's just make sure that our team's definitely securing their win, whereby we'll sit in the cap and we'll let our teammates finish off the Nagato. And in the meantime, Z's also coming up to support us, and he's going to cap as well. Just providing that little bit of reassurance to our team, look, if you screw up taking down the enemy Nagato, it's alright. You've got 2 destroyers who are willing to win the game by simply capping out. And that's one thing I've found as well in general, that there's a tendency when your team's on a roll to lose much more easily, simply because you become overconfident and throw away games by forgetting about capturing, or alternatively forgetting about the enemy ships that can still pose a threat. But the enemy Nagato is not going to pose a threat, as they get ripped to pieces by our friendly North Carolina. Taking a look at the post-game stats, we can see that our victory comprised of 1 devastating strike achievement, whereby we destroyed an enemy ship with a single artillery salvo, torpedo salvo, or aircraft by causing damage to over 50% of the destroyed ship's normal health pool, in this case being a torpedo salvo on the enemy Kagero, and our battle performance consisted of 78,643 HP of damage, being attributed amongst 19 target hits of our main batteries, 7 torpedo hits, 1 incapacitation, 3 enemy ships destroyed, 1 fire set, and 7 floods caused. Looking at the team scores, we can see that we topped our team in terms of base experience earned by picking up 1,966. Our role in this match, from our own perspective, was to initially provide vision on the western side of the map. Having achieved that, we noticed that there was a gap for the enemy destroyers to advance through in the centre of the map, so we decided to pull back and provide a defensive line against the advancement of the enemy destroyers through the middle. Thereby we closed down essentially 3 enemy destroyers and put them out of action for ours and our team's efforts, and then we went back into harassment mode for our torpedoes to harass the remnant enemy battleships. Looking at our detailed report, we have 2 key items to note here. The first is in terms of the damage we dealt to particular enemy ships, whereby in general in World of Warships, if I remember correctly, the more damage you do to an individual enemy ship as a percentage of its total health, the more experience you gain. Which means if you take out an enemy ship all by yourself when it has 100% health, then as a result you'll gain the maximum amount of XP. That's exactly what we saw against the enemy Shiratsuyu, and we almost saw the same against the enemy Kagero, knocking off approximately 75% of their health pool. And this led to us gaining such an amount of XP as to top our team by a significant margin. On top of this, our second point is in terms of our damage upon spotting, whereby we were able to spot out 40,846 HP worth of damage for our teammates. This goes to show the importance in a destroyer, especially one with decent detectability and decent speed, in providing vision for your team to shoot at the enemy fleet, whether it be early on in the game or in the later stages of a match. Finally, coming on to our credits and experience earned in total, we can see that after deductions and additions, we walked away with 225,132 silver credits and a grand total of 2,949 experience. To conclude, as far as first impressions go, the Akatsuki's left a very positive one, whereby she seems to handle very nicely in my experience and offers an overall balance of guns and torpedoes, although an emphasis on torpedoes for the time being. But as time goes on, we get the upgrades and improve the skill selection for our captain. We'll just have to see. And on a wider note, it is rather nice to be back to the world of random battles, even though, as I explained at the start of this video, I do not really have a different mindset or a on and off switch for ranked compared to random battles. I see it pretty much the same. I enjoy the game for what it is regardless of the mode I play, and I give it my best shot each and every day. But still, it is nice to be back to normal, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to be back to doing the videos and doing what I enjoy most. So if you have enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future World of Warships gameplays on my channel. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care and fair seas.